Hello and welcome to your video lesson for tonight, March the 6th, March the 7th, and heading into tomorrow, the 8th. This is just a review kind of type lesson where we're going to do looking at the max and min of quadratics. So very, very similar to what you would have done in grade 10, and then we're going to do some word problems with it. So we're going to review vertex form, change from standard to vertex form by completing the square, and then we're going to solve some word problems using vertex form. So you have to recall which quadratic form gives max or min, and how do you know if it's a max or a min? The form that gives you a maximum or minimum is vertex form. What is vertex form? If you recall, vertex form is y equals ax minus h squared plus k. So that's what you would have saw in grade 10. We're going to do the exact same thing this year, except for instead of y, we'll have f of x at some point. Why does that help you? That gives you the vertex, which has coordinates h and k. Why do we care about the vertex? Because the vertex is a special point that gives you the maximum or the minimum. So if your parabola has a positive a value, it opens up, and therefore it comes to an absolute bottom, which means it makes a minimum. If your parabola or your function has a negative a value, that means it opens down, which means it comes to an absolute top or an absolute peak, and that means it makes a maximum. So whenever you see min or max type questions, you got to be thinking vertex form. And why do I think vertex form? Because I need the vertex. We are going to find the max or min value. Again, this is in standard form. We need to convert this to vertex form. How do I do that? Complete the square. As a quick review for completing the square, first thing you would do, common factor out any number from the first two terms other than 1, which in this case, all we have is a 1 out front of the first two terms. 1x squared and a 6x, so I can't common factor any numbers out. So then what you do is x squared plus 6x. I'm only going to write this step this one and only time. Again, you would have done this in grade 10. So I take that second value, I cut it in half. That gives me 3, half it and square it. 3 squared is 9. So really what you end up with here is plus 9 minus 9, and then the plus 7 on the back end. Again, this step right here, you don't actually have to show it if you know what you're doing. From there, x squared plus 6x plus 9, put brackets around it. We're going to move this negative 9 outside the brackets. Once we do that, we got to multiply by our a value. In this case, our a value is just a 1. So 1 times negative 9 still just gives you negative 9 plus 7. And then to factor that, or to get to vertex form, you're looking for two numbers that multiply to 9 and add to 6. So 3 and 3. Those numbers are always going to be the same as long as you completed the square properly. Another way to think about it is whatever your half value was, so my half value is 3, that's always what this is going to factor to. So x, take this sign right here, plus 3 all squared, and then negative 9 plus 7 gives you negative 2. Now we got to find the max of the min value. First of all, does this parabola open up or down? Based off the a value, this parabola opens up. That means it makes a minimum. So we're going to say minimum at, and your minimum value is the y coordinate of your vertex, y equals negative 2. For b, this time we have a value, an a value, so we're going to common factor that out of just the first two terms only. So 2 x squared plus 6x. Again, I'm not writing this step over here as I did in the first one again. I'm just going to assume that you know it. If you don't, then maybe write it like that. But at this point, you got to remember two words. Half it, square it. Half of 6 is 3. 3 squared is 9. So plus 9 minus 9. And then we have our plus 5 on the back end. And then 2, x squared plus 6x plus 9. When this negative 9 exits the bracket, you got to multiply by that 2, which makes negative 18 plus 5. And this is always going to have this sign, and then whatever the half value was, which was 3, or you can think of it, what two numbers multiply to 9 and add to 6? 3, all squared. And then negative 18 plus 5 is negative 13. This parabola also opens up, which means it makes a minimum at y equals negative 13. Hopefully, everyone, that is review of stuff from grade 10. We're going to keep going with that. Just getting a little bit harder. I have an a value, this time negative 4. Common factor out that negative 4 out of just the first two terms. Now, in this case, we are going to have to deal with some decimals and possibly some fractions. If it's a nice decimal, then work with the decimals. If it's not a nice decimal, which means it is a it's a non-repeating decimal that carries on forever on your calculator screen, then you're going to have to leave it as a fraction. In this case, a half of 5 is 2.5, which is a nice number, squared. If you enter 2.5 squared in your calculator, you should get 6.25. And then plus 31. And then negative 4. I'm going to start cutting out some steps because I'm sure we get the hang of it. Oh, and one more thing too. Negative 20 divided by negative 4 should have been a positive 5. So x plus whatever the half value was, 2.5, all squared. When that negative 6.25 exits the brackets, make sure you multiply it by negative 4, which is going to give you 25, plus 31. And we have negative 4x plus 2.5 squared plus 56. Based off my a value, negative 4, it opens down, which means it makes a max at y equals 56. Excuse me. Now, the next one, part D. This one we're going to have to common factor at a fraction. So this is just calculator work with your fractions. Take out 3/4 from the first two. If we do 9 divided by 3/4, we're going to end up with 12x. Half it and square it. Plus 36 minus 36, and then that minus 4 still. And this is going to factor to x, whatever my half value was. Half of 12 is 6, all squared. Negative 36 times 3/4 is negative 27 minus 4. Gives us 3/4 x plus 6 squared minus 31. This, based off our positive a value, opens up, which means it makes a minimum at y equals negative 31. So that's it for kind of basic skills, completing the square. We're going to move into some word problems for our last three examples. Our first word problem, the path of a baseball being hit by a bat, is modeled by this function. H is the height in meters, d is the distance in meters. What is the maximum height of the ball, and how far away is the ball from home plate when it occurs? You're looking for keywords, maximum or minimum. I see maximum, think vertex. Am I in vertex form? No, I'm in standard form. How do I get to vertex form? Complete the square. So we have our function notation. H of d, meaning height, is a function of distance. Common factor out the negative 0.03 from just the first two terms. Leaves you with d squared minus 34d. Cut that in half, 17. 17 squared, 289. So plus 289 minus 289. And then we have our plus 1.5 on the back end. This is going to factor to whatever my half value was, so 17, all squared. And then when I multiply negative 289 by negative 0.03, that should give you, if you round to 2 decimal places, 8.67 plus 1.5. Collect those like terms on the back end. 8.67 plus 1.5 gives me 10.17. Some very quick self-checks. If we got a negative number for my k value, so if I got a negative number here, I probably made a mistake. Why? Because that represents height, and how can my maximum height be negative, which in this case would be underground? If this was positive, we would also know I made a mistake. If that was positive, that would mean my vertex is negative 17. How could my maximum occur at negative 17 meters behind me, assuming you hit the ball forwards? So just some quick built-in self-checks. What is my vertex? My vertex is 17 and 10.17. You kind of got to know what each one of those variables represents. That's like my x, so d. That's like my y, so h. So to answer the question, what is the max height? My max height, I'm just going to summarize it like this. You should write it as a therefore statement. Max height is 10.17 meters. And how far away from the batter is it, or how far away from home plate is it? 17 meters away from home plate. And again, you should write that for an assignment or for a test with a therefore statement. Our next one, find the minimum product of two numbers whose difference is 8. So you have to know what product means. Product means multiply. Difference means subtract. So we want two numbers. Let's call them x and y. And we'll use p for product. So p equals x times y. And I also know that the difference is 8. So I know that x minus y equals 8. If I rearrange that equation for x equals 8 plus y. Now I can sub that in to this equation. So my product equals 8 plus y times y. I know the y is written on the back end this time, but you still do distributive property. So that's going to leave you with 8y plus y squared. Let's rewrite that in descending order of y, meaning y squared comes first, then 8y. Now it doesn't really help us yet. We're getting there though. Keyword, minimum or maximum. I see minimum. I know I need the vertex. That currently is not a vertex form. I need to complete the square. What is a half of 8? 4. What's 4 squared? 16 minus 16. And if you want, you can put that all in brackets. That's going to factor to y plus 4, all squared, and minus 16. So, vertex. This basically tells me that y equals negative 4. Right? If it's y plus 4, it's going to become y equals negative 4. And if I take that and I sub that into this equation for y, that's going to give me x equals 8 minus 4, which equals 4. That means that one of your numbers is 4, the other number is negative 4. So any two numbers who their difference is 8, which the difference between 4 and negative 4, if you were to count, is 8, is 4 and negative 4. And the lowest thing that you can get when you multiply those two numbers is negative 16. Our last example, if you had me for grade 10, I stressed that this was one of my personal favorites. It still is my personal favorite in grade 11, so I would know how to do a question like this. Coffee house costs $11, 400 students attend. It is estimated that for every $1 increase in price, the attendance will decrease by 20 people. What price gives them the max revenue, and what is the max revenue? So you have to have a basic knowledge of business, and that basic knowledge would be, you know what the word revenue means. Revenue just means money brought in by the company. In this case, money brought in. So it's not profit, because profit's like how much money you brought in less your costs. Revenue is just money brought in. So in this case, Holy Trinity would be equal to the number of tickets sold times the price. So in general, price times tickets sold. And that gives you a roadmap. Price. Price I told you is $11. And they're going to increase it in increments of $1. So 11 plus 1x, because we don't know how many times they're going to increase it by $1. Every time they do that, they are going to lose 20 people. So they start out with 400. Lose means subtract. They're going to lose 20x. Again, 20x because we don't know how many times they're going to increase the price by $1. From there, you need to FOIL. So first, outside, inside, last. When you FOIL, you should get 4,400 minus 220x plus 400x. So there's our first, outside, inside, and then our last minus 20x squared. Let's rewrite that in descending order of x and collect like terms. So negative 20x squared. If I collect the like terms in the middle, negative 220 plus 400 gives you 180x and plus 4,400. From there, how do you know what to do? Again, looking for keywords, we see maximum. I need the vertex. How do I get the vertex from standard form? Complete the square. First things first, factor out the negative 20, which gives us x squared minus 9x. Half it and square it. So if I take a half of 9, it gives me negative 4.5. And if I square that, I should get 20.25 minus 20.25 and then plus 4,400 on the back end. That's going to common factor to x minus 4.5 all squared. And then 4,400. And when that negative 20.25 exits the brackets, don't forget to multiply it by negative 20, which should give you 405. And last step, collect those like terms on the back end. 4,400 plus 405 gives us 4,805. You should answer this with a therefore statement, but I'm just going to summarize a little bit. So the first part says what price gives them the max revenue. What is the max revenue? So I'll take care of the second part first, max revenue. This right here gives us the max revenue. So the most that Trinity can bring in for money from Coffee House under these stipulations would be $4,805. The price, we got to do some extra work to get the price. I know that the price right here equals 11 plus 1x. From my vertex form, I know that x equals 4.5. So that doesn't tell me that the price is 4.5 because X doesn't represent the price. X represents the number of $1 increases you do in price. So that would be equal to 11 plus 1 times 4.5, which is 11 plus 4.5, which equals 1550. So that right there would give you the price that maximizes revenue. So max price. So if the Trinity charged $15.50, they would be, quote unquote, greedy enough where they wouldn't lose so many customers that they would still be able to make a maximum profit of maximum revenue of $4,805. Again, make sure we know how to do something like that. It's a very good question. So that's it for your video lesson. Tomorrow we're going to do kind of some more review type lesson for solving, which involves quadratic formula. Make sure you get the note off D2L. Don't forget you have an assignment that is due on the Wednesday after March break. If you don't have it, make sure you get it from me on Friday. If not, email me and I will send you a copy via email. This assignment is not on D2L. Have a good night. See you tomorrow. If I don't see you tomorrow, good luck at Hoops for Heart and/or have an excellent March break.